Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And in this live, we are talking about liver detox pathways and particularly how histamine is broken down. And then we're going to go into some different questions. We've had some fantastic questions that were submitted. So we'll be doing some on topic questions here that have to do with liver detox and how it may be affecting you if you're dealing with histamine intolerance or mast cell activation. And so while you're joining, let us know that you're here. Just say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're from. And I'll do our quick disclaimers here, which is that, of course, everything is for informational, educational purposes. We're not here to treat, diagnose, cure, prevent illness. So do work with your healthcare provider. If you see links that are affiliate links, it means that Mast Cell 360 may make a small commission if you purchase through the link. And we're very circumspect about what we recommend and what we use personally or use in the practice and have tested out. So it never costs you anything extra. If you'd like to support us back for all our free resources, then that's a way that you can do that, is to click through our links. All right. So Q&A reminders here to please keep your questions to the topic for the Facebook Live, which is about liver detox. And we're going to really hone in on how histamine is broken down. Do please only submit your question once. That lets me get to more questions. And we're not able to do off-topic or in-depth personal health questions. So I do appreciate your understanding there. So here's what we're going to look at today. How does your liver break down histamine? And we're going to look at the major phase 2 liver detox pathways and kind of the overall process of liver detox. We're going to learn about liver supports that can help break down histamine. And then we're going to talk about order of operations and when to support these liver pathways. And the reason this came up is that I get so many questions about, well, when are we going to support methylation? Well, what about phase 1 detox? When are we going to bring in things like methylfolate? So I wanted to look at that big picture with you all and help you understand, particularly for sensitive people, when to bring in some of these supports. So thinking about histamine, if we're going to focus on histamine, what happens to histamine after it leaves your GI tract? So many of you may know that in histamine, that histamin's often broken down in our GI tract. It's really in the small intestine by the enzyme diamine oxidase, so DAO. But DAO can't always break down all of it. So then where does it go? So it goes into the bloodstream, stored in tissues, and then gets pulled into the liver and these other detox pathways. And we often think about the liver as being our major detox pathway. And that's what we're going to focus on today. But just for context, we want to remember also that the gallbladder is involved in detox. And so the gallbladder houses what's been broken down by the liver and then excretes it into the intestines. The kidneys are involved in detoxification. The lymphatic system, so lymph moves toxins. Your skin releases toxins as well. And of course, the GI tract is involved in excreting toxins that come through the liver and the gallbladder. And then we often don't think about this, but our lungs are involved in detox. So here's an image that I made that is showing the liver and how detox works in the liver. So that's what we're going to zoom in on and focus here. So when you have toxins that are circulating into the bloodstream that are sent to the liver for processing, you have this phase 1 process, and these are often called CYP450 reactions. And glutathione also has a role here. So this will be important when we talk about glutathione in a moment. And so then phase 1 takes these toxins from the tissues and processes them into an intermediate. And if this is done really quickly, these intermediates can be stuck here and they're water soluble at this point. So this phase 1 is taking fat soluble toxins and then converting them into water soluble. And then we have 6 phase 2 pathways. And these pathways are helping to kind of package up these intermediates. And so this phase two is what we're going to look at in more depth here. And then what happens at that point? So there's this packaging. Then it can be sent to the blood to clear through the kidneys, and it can be sent through the bile to be cleared through the intestines. And so that part is called phase three detox. Now, let's look at these phase two detox in a little more depth. And actually, first, I want to talk about glutathione. So many people ask me, well, what about taking glutathione? And if you have a robust system to where you can take all kinds of supplements and it doesn't bother you, and you can take the medications for the most part that you need to take, then glutathione may be just fine. But if you're sensitive, then we want to be more careful with glutathione. A lot of times, sensitive people, and you may have found this already, sensitive people can have a lot of trouble with glutathione. And so, even if we're preparing for a urinary mycotoxin test, a lot of times people will just use sprinkles of glutathione, never a full capsule, or they'll work up really slowly just what they can do temporarily just for that test and then come back off again. Now, there's other people with really robust systems that feel great on glutathione, so it can be individual. But if you're sensitive, go slowly. And one of the major reasons for this, and I'll come back to our detox image here in a second, is that this can create too many toxins too quickly, and then those can get dumped into the bloodstream or into the intestines even. So if we step back here to this liver image. So here again, you see how we glutathione on both sides. So glutathione can help. Conjugation is like a packaging. Glutathione can help with these water-soluble intermediates. But glutathione is also part of this phase one, so it can draw more toxins out of the tissues as well. And that is where it can go too quickly. Most of the people that I work with, their phase one works pretty well. It's the phase two that gets sluggish. And then that's where we get stuck with detox. And that's why we have to go pretty slowly with detox when you have sensitivities and mast cell activation. The other thing is that we have lots of mast cells in the GI tract. So we don't want to be dumping too quickly in here. So that's why I talk a lot about slow and steady. And just slow and steady, or be the tortoise, not the hare. So let's break these detox pathways down more that are involved in histamine. So a lot of times people aren't talking about the other detox pathways. They'll talk about DAO and they'll talk about methylation. So DAO breaks the histamine down in the small intestine. And then methylation, this is one of the best known major pathways for liver detox of histamine. And methylation is a process that makes SAMe, and SAMe can be taken as a supplement. And that SAMe is a cofactor for an enzyme called HNMT. So HNMT stands for histamine N-methyltransferase. Histamine N-methyltransferase. And so it needs that SAMe. And the HNMT breaks down that histamine systemically. It can be slowed down or affected by mold toxins. All these processes can. So these are some things that support it. So methyl B12, methylfolate, even zinc, B6, B2, TMG, trimethylglycine. But these are usually too strong for sensitive people. So why is that? Well, if you speed up methylation, you're going to speed up detox of other things like metals that typically need to be detoxed later down the road. Now, again, this is for sensitive people. This can be too strong. If you have a robust system, you may be able to take those methylation supports just fine. But I wanted to just caution, because a lot of times people are told, well, if you have histamine issues, you should take a methylation product. And if you feel strongly about doing that, I would start with sprinkles and go very slowly if you're sensitive. But this is one of the detox pathways for methylation. Now, another one is called acetylation. And this one also has a role in clearing histamine. It clears some chemicals, medications, even some carcinogens, particularly that charring that you get from grilling meat and so on. And it's supported with B5 as one of the major supports for acetylation. Now, when do you bring in B5? Well, typically people need to get B1 on board first and B2 on board. So that's kind of an order of operations as well if you're really sensitive. So a lot of this applies to sensitivities. Then there's another pathway I want to touch on called glucuronidation. And this pathway clears histamine. It's also clears salicylates, and it's one of the major liver pathways for mold toxins, the majority of them. They can use all the different pathways, but glucuronidation is the heavy hitter for mold toxins. It clears hormones, it clears fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin E, and numerous chemicals. And supports for glucuronidation, there's a lot of them, but when I was doing research into this, these were shown to support it across the board. So we had rosemary, astaxanthin, calcium D-glucarate, ellagic acid that comes from certain fruits and vegetables, and then pterostilbene that comes from things like blueberries. And so some supports for glucuronidation upregulated and downregulated other enzymes because there's a lot of glucuronidation enzymes, but these were supportive across the board. So when we're thinking about this clearing of histamine, one of the things we also want to think about is this nighttime histamine dumping. So this can happen in MCAS and histamine intolerance where histamine levels can peak at night. And then at that point, they're in the bloodstream. They need to be processed by the liver. And histamine acts as a neurotransmitter that regulates sleep-wake cycles. And mast cells are also involved in those sleep-wake cycles. So one of the things to keep in mind as you're working on your histamine levels, that it just takes time for that overall histamine load to come down, as well as to help support the mast cells to reduce the amount of histamine that they're producing. So for that nighttime histamine dumping, people can see improvements, particularly with lowering their histamine levels in foods. So you all probably are familiar with that. And if you're not, we've got a great low histamine foods list that's well referenced on our website. There's a few other great sources for that. Just make sure you've got a really good referenced one, because a lot of times I see foods lists that allow foods that are still higher in histamine, like fresh fish is pretty high in histamine. And so, and then supporting those mast cells to reduce that histamine release, of course, and then supplements that help reduce those histamine levels. And some people do better with antihistamines to help reduce how much histamine the mast cells are producing. So let's talk about this order of operations. So typically where we want to start is lowering histamine foods to get some of this overall load down. So this is about detoxing and reducing histamine levels in general. The other thing I want to touch on is drinking enough water. Water is a natural antihistamine. Water is so critical for the kidneys to help clear toxins. And if we don't have enough water, if we're not drinking enough water, then we're going to have higher histamine levels in our body. So mast cells need a lot of hydration. And so trying to get at least half your body weight in water a day. So if you weigh 120 pounds, they say 64 ounces should be the minimum. If you weigh 150, you'd be looking at about 75 ounces. And you may need a little bit of electrolytes for that. So that can be things like salt, a little potassium, and so on. So make sure you're keeping that in balance. That is very dependent on your blood pressure. So I want to just leave that for people to talk with their practitioner with. And then we want to, of course, support the mast cells, reduce that histamine release. Add in things like DAO if you can. So that reduces histamine spillover from the GI tract into the liver. It may not get all of it though. So a lot of times people can't do DAO and eat really high histamine all the time. Now, when I say really high histamine, I'm talking about having pizza, having fast food, having a glass of wine. Most of you probably aren't able to eat that way. And eventually we want to get these histamine foods back in, at least reasonably. So we don't want to be super low histamine forever. But for the time being, we have to take some load off. And then another one to pay attention to is resolving constipation. So if we have constipation, then we're going to have those toxins stuck in the GI tract and they can be reabsorbed. So that's a big one to work on. We want to add some gentle binders when ready. And then infrared sauna for people who can do that. I'm going to talk about when and how infrared sauna can play a role. And supporting the liver pathways also once we have some binders on board. So we would bring these liver supports in. This is what I really wanted to emphasize. Once you don't have to be doing infrared sauna, but once you've kind of lowered your histamine load, once you've supported your mast cells, and make sure to resolve constipation, because we don't want to speed up liver processing and then not have enough water to clear those toxins or to have the toxins sitting in the GI tract. So this is that important order of operations. And then we can generally people start with glucuronidation supports because it's the most important of the phase 2 detox pathways. And that's been written about again and again in studies. Even though methylation and glutathione get so much attention, this pathway is processing the majority of what people are processing through their livers, particularly when we're looking at chemicals and we're looking at mold toxins. So let's look at some options based on how sensitive you are. If you're hypersensitive, and maybe you're not hypersensitive, but you're just getting started, or you've not gotten to where you could add a little bit of binders in, then you could do some gentle liver massage. And what you can do is just put your hands over your liver and just very gently, just a couple minutes here and there, help increase the blood flow to your liver. So that's a nice thing to do there. And then really critical to stay hydrated. I'm always amazed at how many people I work with who, when I ask them about how much water they drink, they're like, oh, I don't know, probably I get in 2 glasses, 3 glasses a day. And so we want to stay hydrated. We want to eat cleanly. The reason we want to eat cleanly again is about reducing that overall load that the liver has to clear. So if we're eating conventional meat, then we're clearing things like growth hormones. We're having to clear things like pesticides. So be thinking about that. Or we're eating high pesticide produce, things like conventional bell peppers, conventional grapes, or other berries and things like that. Now, here's some other supports. Dandelion root tea can be made fresh. It gently supports glucuronidation and protects the liver, and it's low salicylate. And so a lot of people can do well with that, especially if you can get fresh dandelion root. Now, if you're going to dig that up yourself, make sure you're digging it up someplace that doesn't have pesticides. And a way to tell that is, do you have clover or other types of what a lot of times people call weeds in the yard? So if they're there, then probably not a lot of pesticides being used, but make sure you know. The other things, if you're not salicylate intolerant, is fresh organic rosemary and organic blueberries. So those also support the liver, so we can support through foods. Then if you're sensitive, so hypersensitive, meaning you really struggle to take any supplements, you're just not there yet. Sensitive means you can take some things, but you might have to start with just a little bits at a time. And sensitive people can work with castor oil packs, but you may have to start with a small amount. It could even be like a half a teaspoon once a week over the liver. So I'm going to show you my favorite castor oil here in a minute. That's really been high quality, most effective. And dandelion root tea, again, can use dandelion extract, the organic rosemary and blueberries. And then if you can tolerate it, low EMF infrared sauna. Now I'll talk about that briefly here in a moment too. Sensitive people, once you have binders on board, can do about 2 to 5 minutes a week. And if you get a good low EMF infrared sauna, then you don't have to use it at high heat. So that's one of the important things. It's actually most effective when you first turn it on, the one I'm going to show you. And then, okay, so what if you're somebody who's in the robust category? So that means you can take supplements easily. You can start with a half to a whole capsule. It doesn't really bother you. Then you can do a little bit more. So you can step it up and do castor oil packs 3 times a week. You could probably do the full 1 to 3 tablespoons. You can do sauna 10 to 20 minutes a week. And then there's something called glucuronidation assist I'm going to show you that you can use as well to support your liver. So ideally, you'd have some binders on board for that. So just some quick notes here on some of the things we talked about, and then I want to get to some questions. So DAO, diamine oxidase, most of you probably heard of this. It's generally taken 10 to 15 minutes at the start of a meal or after a meal. If you forget, it can be taken in the middle if you have to, but best 10 to 15 minutes before the meal. And can even be taken a little bit at bedtime just to help lower some of that overall load. It's okay to open the capsule and sprinkle it on food. And you can increase it if you're eating out or you're able to start eating out or you're going to eat at a family member or something like that. But even if you're eating low histamine, it's good to take this if you can, because just the act of digesting produces a little bit of histamine. So it does need some B6 to activate it. And that's why I put B6 in this formula. It's just the tiniest amount. 1 milligram is just a sprinkle of B6. But a lot of people that I work with have low B6 levels and they can't take like a full B6 capsule. So that's one option. And you can get that formula if you use this link, mastcell360.com/DAO120. Then castor oil packs. Let's talk about castor oil packs for a minute. So some people who aren't as sensitive can start these right away. If you're really sensitive and your liver is pretty congested, then you may need to have a little bit of binders on board, even just sprinkles. And some people are asking what kind of binders. So we really tend to customize that based on which toxins people are dealing with. But some easy ones would be generally tolerated would be some activated charcoal is often where people will start, but you got to go really slowly. So if you're sensitive, like a sprinkle. So this is my favorite castor oil. It's called Queen of Thrones. And here's some keys with finding castor oil. It needs to be in a dark glass bottle. You want it to be cold pressed and organic. And so there's a lot of castor oil out there that's been processed with things like hexanes. You don't want to use those. And people can start with a little 1/2 teaspoon to 3 tablespoons. If you have salicylate intolerance, then you may not want to use this. But if you don't, castor oil packs are really supportive of the liver. And then I always just put an old t-shirt or old tank top over the pack to keep it from staining the sheets. So people can start really slowly with that, just 2 to 3 minutes. And you don't just have to use it over the liver. You can put it on the abdomen if you're having abdominal cramping or the gallbladder. You can even put it over lymph areas like your groins, around your neck, and so on. It's just thick. Now, dandelion root tea, we talked about this. This supports glucuronidation as well. Oh, let me go back for a second. My team did want me to let you know that there is 10% off the castor oil packs and the castor oil if you use the coupon code MASTCell360. So we would try to get you guys discounts with companies as much as we can. Then the dandelion root tea we talked about. So you can make that fresh if you're super sensitive. You can also get it as a tea. So here's a link to one of the companies that makes it organic that you can look at as well. And then the sauna, if anybody is looking for sauna, I did a lot of research here. We're going to have some information coming out on this. So stay tuned to our email for a lot more details. But if you're interested, the company that we use is Sunlighten. And they also have solo units. You don't have to get the big cabins. They have individual units. But the reason that I went with them after doing a lot of research is that they have low RF and electrical fields, and they use hypoallergenic wood. So basswood's hypoallergenic if you want a cabin. It's minimal off gassing. They don't use any glues. They use magnets. So it's really quite fantastic. And then there's a discount for you. It's quite significant that they offered. So $600 off the sauna cabins, or $250 off a solo model. And then lastly, before we do our questions, I want to hit on a couple other things. And so this is a product called Glucuronidation Assist, and this is one that I developed. It has some calcium deglucarate, some dandelion root extract, ellagic acid, the rosemary, the pterostilbene, the astaxanthin. So this would be for people who are more robust, and you can get 10% off of that through February 23rd at midnight. So you can use a coupon code called Liver10. So if you want to grab a screenshot of that, we've got that up there, and grab the link. So I want to do some of these questions while we're here. And we had a few quickly that were pre-submitted. I'm going to pop up here. So someone was asking, do you automatically have liver detox issues with MCAS? And what goes wrong with detox pathways if you're hypersensitive? And so we don't necessarily automatically have liver detox issues with mast cell issues. However, we have to think about always what is triggering the mast cells. Why are we being triggered? It's generally three main categories. It can be toxins, pathogens, stressors, including trauma and chronic stress. And so the toxins are significant. So that's what's going to create the detox issues typically, rather than the mast cells themselves. And then what goes wrong with these detox pathways, it's not necessarily that it goes wrong, but they can get slowed down. And when there's hypersensitivities to medication or supplements, that's not always just the detox pathway. A lot of times that can be the mast cells are overactive, the nervous system is dysregulated. So it's typically more on that side than the detox. And somebody was asking, is there a way to test for liver functioning other than liver enzymes? I mean, there's certainly more involved things like ultrasound and things like that, but the liver enzymes are usually the easiest. Now, the liver enzymes are going to show when things are particularly, when there's a good bit of liver inflammation. So you can have liver detox trouble without the elevation of the enzymes, and can just be that liver's got a heavy load, it's processing a lot. So we want to be gentle with our livers. So then we talked about ways to detox gently. And let me see what other questions we can hop into. How does detoxing the liver help with inflammation, decrease inflammation? So when toxins are processed through the liver, it can stimulate mast cells to process those, which will increase inflammation. Just having those toxins in our bodies themselves can contribute to inflammation. And then when we're detoxing a lot, see, these questions are so involved. So we can have trouble with neurotransmitters and so on. But detoxing can just help leave more nutrients available for making neurotransmitters, for supporting our mast cells. There's mast cells in the brain for helping with neurotransmitter production and so on. And then fatty liver and high LDL appear to be associated in some cases of MCAS. Why? So fatty liver does happen, but typically, again, we're dealing with some kind of toxicity or pathogen load. And we've got to think again, what is underlying? And an LDL can go higher. There's a correlation with ongoing chronic illness and thyroid issues. And so LDL can be elevated. This is one of the lipids that gets tested for, often in a basic cholesterol panel. And so that LDL often is regulated by the thyroid. So Again, trying to think more systemically, more big picture. And then what genetics play a role in liver detox? So there are genes that, for all of these pathways, there's acetylation genes and glucuronidation genes and methylation genes and sulfation genes, all of them, CYP450 genes. What I've found is if we clean up the terrain, if we clean up the toxins, then the signaling, the epigenetics, the ways that these genes are being expressed often recover significantly. So that's a really important note. And so it's not always just about the genetics. That's something that is the way that things were looked at for a very long time as well. It's just genetic. But now we're finding, well, actually, it's epigenetic. It's about, can we clean things up so that the genes can express properly? And it's quite interesting because there's hundreds of glucuronidation enzymes. There's tons of acetylation enzymes. And so we have a lot of backups, fortunately, there. Okay, let's go over to some of our current questions here. And pop this one off. You guys have great questions. And so I'm looking for on topic questions about detox. And Doreen's asking, I have a high liver count. So I'm guessing that might be liver enzymes. I'm not sure. How to detox from reacting to everything. So if reacting to everything, then we got to pull back from detox and start with the nervous system, start calming things if reacting to everything. And look at, is there something going on in your environment or your life that's keeping your system stirred up? So you may not be able to go straight to supplements or things like that. You may be able to do some gentle liver massage. Okay, and then Kelly's asking about milk thistle blocking a pathway. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but milk thistle typically supports the liver and can support glutathione and curcumin. Again, I don't know that there's significantly a blocking of the pathways. So curcumin often has a nice anti-inflammatory effect. If somebody has some pretty high salicylate loads and salicylate intolerance, and some of these herbals do get broken down through glucuronidation, and that salicylate pathway may need to be supported some. We've got a lot of details about that. And then Joe's asking, are there precautions in using calcium D-glucarate when someone with mycotoxins uses it? Yes. So with calcium D-glucarate, the major piece here is one, if you have parathyroid issues, you wouldn't take, if you have hyperparathyroidism, it's not too common, you would not use calcium products. But also, if you have really low estrogen, then you might have to just use small amounts or sprinkles. So if there's hot flashes, then it can also help detox estrogen. And sometimes it may break that estrogen down a little too quickly if you speed up glucuronidation too much. And so it's always about finding the right level, the right amount. So Penny's asking, if taking multiple medications, this places extra strain on the liver, is there an ideal pathway to cleanse? It's very dependent. Again, these things are so case dependent. And so it depends on which pathways and are they even affecting the liver or not. And so, and what are those medications being used for? There was another pre-submitted question about antihistamines and about those having an effect on the liver, but we have to think about the big picture. Are we supporting the mast cells for things to calm down so that we can move forward? And a lot of medications are involved in the phase 1 side. Some of them are on the phase 2 side. But what's the benefit of them? Is there a benefit there? And then if you have elevated liver enzymes, then somebody needs to evaluate all of that, of course. Jillian's asking how much water is too much. Good question. That's also pretty independent. So, or pretty dependent on your situation, your health. If you weigh 100 pounds, then a gallon of water may be too much. If you weigh 300 pounds, then a gallon of water may not be enough. But if you're drinking 2 or 3 gallons a day, then that might be too much. So listen into your body, but do make sure you're getting a decent amount of water. Okay. And then Teresa's asking, is it okay to use DAO with some of these other medications? And so DAO is, I've never seen any contraindications. It's always good to let your prescriber know everything that you're taking. But DAO is just going to break down histamine in the GI tract and help lower the load of what could escape from the GI tract. So something that we make naturally. I'm sorry that you're waking up with terrible pain and nightmares. Um, sometimes people sometimes medications really help people move forward, especially the entry level ones. So I used to be really concerned about them, and I kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater, being concerned about all medications. And what I found was that that held me back. And there may be, everybody's individual, so you have to evaluate for yourself. But I just wanted to put that out there that sometimes when people use small amounts and just enough to calm things down, then they were able to move forward. So that's always a conversation to have with your provider. Okay, so Teresa was saying my insides were being pulled out when I tried charcoal and L-glutamine. So I don't know if you tried them together. A lot of people have difficulty if there's like anxiety or insomnia, have trouble with L-glutamine. So we always want to try things in one thing at a time and give it a few days to see the effect. And if you're sensitive, then little sprinkles. Also, with binders, we want to make sure to drink plenty of water when you take them so that there's water in the GI tract, because otherwise it can bind up some of the water there. All right, so we've got some other questions that are kind of big questions like how long to take binders and so on. I've got a lot of that information in my mold course for anybody who hasn't taken it. And our team put together for you guys that are on this Facebook Live with us 10% off, also through February 23rd at midnight. So that's massl360.com/mold-course if you want to really get into a lot of details about which binders and how to test for mold and detoxing mold and how to do that if you're sensitive, how to do that if you have salicylate intolerance and so on. So if you look there on the website, you're going to see a lot of details, and we've got a basic and an advanced, and it'll tell you the differences between those. So the last few things here. So Hillary was asking, how long do we rub the castor oil in? Yeah, I think she's saying rub. So typically you just apply it and you put the pack on and you let it stay there. Let's see. Oh, Deborah's saying she loves the sunlight and sauna. She uses the Solo. Thanks for sharing that, Deborah. I'm glad that that works for you. I really like it too. And Nabila, that's right. Hot temperatures sometimes can cause mast cells to, some people are heat sensitive. And so that's why I really like the sunlight and low EMF infrared sauna, because you don't have to set it at a hot temperature. And it is most effective when you first turn it on. So it's worked really well for people who have heat sensitivities. Okay. Let me see if there's just a few more questions we can get to here today, everybody. And See, can all my skin issues be a liver issue, congestion? There's so many things it could be. Skin's tied to the GI tract. It's a detox organ in itself. Toxins can come out, can be hormonal. So a number of things. And does coffee detox the liver? Drink small amounts. There is actually a discount code, Deborah, that's going to go out, I believe, next week. And so check with us there. But I love the Purity Organic Coffee. We do have a regular code as well. I think my team can put in for you. But coffee does help detox the liver. And so coffee supports that phase 1 detox pathway. If it's a little bit, that usually works well for people. And the decaf is lower salicylate. And then Maria's asking, what about juicing dandelion leaf? So dandelion leaf tends to be more supportive of the kidneys. And then it's the root that tends to help the liver. Okay, Joe's asking if you don't have room for a sauna cabin. Yes, so Sunlight has a solo unit, and it can just be it can be folded down, and then you can open it up and put it on your bed, or you can have it on the floor and then fold it up and pack it up again. The red light panels are a little different than a sauna. So the red light panels don't do quite the same in terms of that deeper detox and helping move toxins out of the tissues and the lymph and so on. Okay, everyone. Oh my gosh, so many great questions. Um, So Deborah, Tuitka tends to be pretty strong for people. It's great supplement, but I tend to recommend it for people who are more robust. And again, robust means that you can take most supplements at a half a capsule or whole capsule. You're not really sensitive to supplements. Thing with Tuitka is it's going to thin the bile, increase the flow of bile into the GI tract, and then that can increase it too quickly for people who are quite sensitive. All right. And so um, we've got some tips on the website for constipation and things like that. So I want to send you guys over there. And if that's something that's really popular and of interest, we can do some more information about that. And then Allison was asking, so we have a consulting clinic. So we don't say patients, we say clients. Because we do consulting, and you can go to our website, masshealth360.com/application. We've updated our processes, and we are, once people get all their paperwork submitted, able to get people in a little more quickly now. A lot more quickly. So around, once the paperwork's submitted, it can be 2 to 3 months right now is the current timing. And it might take you a couple months to get through the process and get all the approval and the paperwork done. So there's a lot more details over there, Allison. If you're interested, you want to take a look there. And let me see if I can just take a couple more questions here. And again, you all, I'm looking for on-topic questions about detox, and particularly we're talking about the relationship with histamine. And so some people are asking about supports for fatty liver. Castor oil packs are one of the things that have been used. And one of the other things that's been used is silymarin, which is an extract of milk thistle. So I can't tell you if that's right for you, but that's something that can help. And let me find one more question here that has to do with our topic. Okay, so many good questions, you all. Again, I just want to make sure that we're focused on our topic for today. And so, with low estrogen, what can I use to detox the liver? Still, a lot of the things that we talked about today apply. And the main thing I would not do is the calcium deglucarate. if you have low estrogen. All right, everyone. I hope that this was helpful and gave you some tips and some good information. And then I'm looking forward to being back with you next week. We're going to talk about what to look for in an MCAS practitioner and things that'll help you find the right kind of person to help you with your case. So we'll be diving into that next week. In the meantime, be very gentle with yourself and keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep learning. Be careful not to be podcast surfing or blog surfing, like channel surfing. So you don't want to activate your nervous system. It's a fine balance, but do keep learning and keep moving forward. You guys have great questions and such an educated group of people. It's always wonderful to be with this community, and we'll see you next week.